So you want to know how this guy was elected? Oh, I mean this guy, sorry. Well, you're in the right place. Today I'll be discussing how Canadian elections work and how you'll get elected. So welcome to Canada Explained. First of all, in order to know how Canadian elections work, we're going to have to discuss a few terms here. The leader of Canada is called the Prime Minister of Canada, not the President, unlike other countries. First of all, elections in Canada happen every 4 years. When a general election happens, several parties run for office. The main political parties in Canada are the Conservative Party of Canada,
Economy where the people who build our homes cannot afford to live in them is fundamentally unjust.
the Liberal Party of Canada,
And what do you and your family do to cut back on plastics?
We have recently switched to drinking water bottles out of water out of when we have water bottles out of a plastic. Away from plastic towards paper, like drink box water bottles, sort of things. There's
the New Democratic Party of Canada, or NDP from what we will now be calling them,
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises. Now,
the Green Party of Canada, and the Bloc Québécois, which exclusively run in Quebec and nowhere else in the country. But I digress. So, what happens when an election is called? When an election is called, it is called by the Prime Minister, and when this is done, Parliament dissolves. This essentially means that government is no longer in session and no laws are going to be passed. This starts the election campaign, which is usually a few months long, and the election will be a fixed date, usually happens in October for our federal elections. Now, each party during this time will run campaigns in order to sway voters one way or another in order to achieve votes. Once the campaigns are over and election day rolls around, people head to the polls to decide which party they want to lead the country. Well, how does this work? Well, we're going to need to look at a map of Canada. Here's a map of Canada, and now here's the map of Canada on election night. You can see here the country is broken down into 343 different areas. These areas are called ridings. Ridings encompass roughly 100,000 voters. Each riding has a seat, and this seat is occupied by a member of parliament. So when an election comes around, people don't actually vote for who they want to be prime minister. They vote for who they want to represent their riding. So for example, if I wanted to vote for the Conservative Party and I wanted them to run this country, I'd vote for the Conservative candidate in my riding. Whichever party wins the most ridings wins the election. Now, here's where things get a little bit nuanced and complicated. In order to achieve what we call in Canada a majority government, you have to get 172 ridings, or seats as we will now call them. This means that your party has the majority of seats, meaning they can pass any bill they want, regardless of what the other parties say.
We do not care.
Now, in recent history, much of Canada has had a minority government under Justin Trudeau. This is what happens when your party wins the most seats, but not a majority. What happens here is the party must rely on other supports to pass bills and legislation, which is what's currently happening, where the Liberals have a minority government that are backed up by the New Democrats to pass legislation. So, let's summarize this. A Canadian election happens once every 4 years. It is called by the Prime Minister, who is the leader of Canada. When an election is called, a campaign begins, which lasts roughly a few months. And then on a set election date, Canadians go to the polls to decide which party they want to run the country. In order for a party to form a government, they have to achieve more seats than the other parties. In order for this to happen, candidates have to be elected in specific ridings. When a party wins the most seats, they get to form government. Now here's where the challenging part comes in. If the party wins the most seats out of all the other parties, but not a majority, so they do not get 172 seats or more, they form a minority government, meaning they have to rely on other parties to pass legislation. Now if they do achieve over 172 seats, they have formed a majority government. In this majority government, they can pass whatever legislation they want without the consideration of other parties. And that's really it. That's how Canadian governments are formed. Elections happen, people vote in the riding, and MPs get elected. That's basically the video. Now, I'm gonna have a lot more videos up, going way more in depth into Canadian politics. This was just a start. My next video will be explaining how by-elections work, which have been quite an important thing in Canadian politics recently. Anyway though, if you enjoyed this type of content, you found it funny or anything, please consider hitting the subscribe button. This is a new channel. If you want to follow my controversial Twitter, in which I'll be posting nice things about why I don't like the government, you can follow that in the link in the description. I hope you have a great day now, and bye.